when she stands there with her little cigarette and she goes, "I want to rob." Iconic.
I don't think I've ever drunk champagne before breakfast before.
Now I've got a wonderful idea.
Hello, welcome back to the Movies for Breakfast podcast. I'm your host, my name's Christy, and today we're covering all of the movies I watched in March. It is midway through April. This is too late, but it's fine. I didn't watch that many movies in March, but there were some bangers in there that I'm really excited to talk about. Timestamps are in the description if you want to jump around, and I will give a brief spoiler-free review and rating for each of the movies, so no worries about spoilers if you haven't seen any of these yet. We'll go chronologically. We'll go through what I watched chronologically. How about that? Okay, I watched Send Help on March 2nd, and I loved it. I had such a good time. I was hesitant about going to see it because I was scared, just to be real with you. I feel like I talk about this a lot, so if you follow me, you know, but I'm not a big fan of horror, and even certain categories of thriller are a bit too horror for me. I just get scared. And also, I go see 90% of the movies I see by myself. So I get extra scared because I'm alone. I did watch The Evil Dead one time, like years ago, because one of my friends was a big fan of it and was like, "You have to watch it." Shout out Sarah. And yeah, I get it. Like I get the role that it plays, and I get why it's so iconic and a cult classic and everything, but that was not for me, and it did haunt me. Thankfully, I don't think Send Help even approaches that level of scariness at all. If you don't know anything about it, it's set on a remote, deserted tropical island. So the premise is that this very young kind of nepo baby corporate boss who has been promoted to CEO is a terrible dick to a longtime, very hardworking, smart employee played by Rachel McAdams. So Dylan O'Brien and Rachel McAdams have this power dynamic where he is significantly younger, less experienced, and less smart and less talented than her in every way. But he looks down on her and treats her like garbage because she's kind of dorky and frumpy, which is very funny because it's still Rachel McAdams. I can see her behind the cardigan and the tuna sandwich. You can't fool me. Things transpire and they find themselves deserted on an island together and needing to survive. So they go from this like corporate office environment to nature. And Linda, played by Rachel McAdams, might just have a few cards up her sleeve when it comes to survival. So you watch their power dynamic shift and change, and you learn a lot about these two characters. I found it thrilling. I had a great time. It was gory, but I knew that, so I was kind of prepared, and I like closed my eyes a couple times when necessary. But I'm very interested in that like corporate power dynamic, and of course there's like gender dynamics at play. I'm trying to do a better job of looking into the camera. I talk to the camera the same way I talk to a person, which is mostly not looking into their eyes. It's not good. I'm working on it. No, I just looked away. Okay. I'm staring you down. There's a kind of fraternity, patriarchal vibe in a lot of corporate environments, and it's just taken for granted and not talked about. I don't know. I mean, everyone has an asshole at work who has treated them badly. Yeah, it was really fun. It took some unexpected turns. I definitely thought that I kind of had the whole arc figured out going in. I was like, okay, you see where this is going. But it did surprise me a couple of times, and I appreciated that. It also did not surprise me a couple of times when I feel like it thought it was going to surprise me. So that was a little bit annoying. And if you've seen it, maybe you know what I'm talking about. But it was great. And just the setting was so fun being on this remote island with them. I'm not a huge Survivor fan. Like I love all reality TV, but I never super got into Survivor, just circumstantially. And to be honest with you, I'm avoiding it because I don't want a new obsession that will ruin my life. Same thing with Big Brother. I'm like, yeah, I know I'll love it. That's the problem. Same thing with Real House. Like I have to limit myself. Do you get what I'm saying? Anyway, if you're a fan of Survivor and you like that kind of thing, you'll love it, I think. I'm like an OG Dylan O'Brien, Teen Wolf fan. Rachel McAdams was a huge part of my childhood and her movies as well, so felt nostalgic seeing them together, and I thought they had really awesome chemistry. Rachel is hilarious. She has a sort of crazy eyes bit that she does that just never gets old to me. The Regina George in her eyes kind of came out in certain moments, and it was stunning. I appreciated the use of lots of what seemed like practical effects as well, and like lots of very physical acting. Costuming was perfect, as much as it can be just like a fun silly, cathartic premise of like your asshole boss actually can't do anything because they're incompetent. There's also like a deeper, more interesting premise there where it's like we live in this, or at least, you know, people in 9-to-5 corporate jobs live in this fantasy world, in this fantasy hierarchy where certain people make so much more money and have so much more power for kind of arbitrary reasons. As much as we like to think it's a meritocracy, like let's be genuine and serious. But in reality, there's like this Hobbesian idea of what if you just were in nature? What if you were just humans and the forces of nature, who would come out on top? That's what this is. It's an interesting premise and question to ask. Triangle of Sadness does something similar, and I really enjoyed Triangle of Sadness as well. This one felt more intimate. This was really a one-on-one performance, which I loved. I gave Send Help 4 stars. My Letterboxd review of it was Triangle of Madness. I stand by that. Next up, I watched The Bling Ring from 2013. I watched that on March 3rd. Oh my gosh, what a cultural touchstone. I don't know how I had never watched The Bling Ring. I would have been in like middle school, high school in 2013. I was very much a demographic for it. For whatever reason, never came across my desk. I never saw it. And I've been doing my Sofia Coppola kind of homework. I watched Marie Antoinette recently as well. So I gave The Bling Ring a little peek. I loved it. I watched it with my friend and we both loved it. It was so nostalgic. It really captured the 2010s, the consumerist, early internet social media days, and how aspirational a certain very specific type of consumerist wealth was. I mean, once we had like videos from iMovie with a filter on dancing to music, I was like, okay, you guys got me. If you don't know, The Bling Ring is a fictional film based on the very true story of some teenagers in LA, middle-class, wealthy teenagers who repeatedly broke into and robbed major celebrity homes, including famously Paris Hilton, who just left her mansion empty and unlocked, and they figured out where it was and went in and took stuff. They did get caught. They were not super sneaky about it. There's a lot of different stories from each one of them about who was really the ringleader, how involved people were, who took the fall, and who got away with it. If you look into it more after watching the movie, I think it's worth like considering that these were real people. These were real kids and teenagers who, some of them were going through some tough stuff at home, and I think they deserve empathy and compassion and kindness as much as anyone else. So that's my one criticism of this movie, is at times it really felt like they were the punching bag of the joke. And then hearing about like Alexis Neyer's life, it feels a little bit icky. So that's one criticism. But if you can set that aside and like treat it as a mostly fictional story, it's just very fun. Very funny things are said. Emma Watson, her American accent just boggles the mind. It's so wrong and weird and strained, and yet it kind of fits the weirdness of the movie. When she stands there with her little cigarette and she goes, "I want to rob." Iconic. Great music, obviously great costume. And it did tug at my heartstrings and kind of make me sad for these kids. It also made me very, very stressed. I gave The Bling Ring 4 stars. Okay. Next up, I watched Fackham Hall. It's a 2025 release. I watched this March 11th. It was streaming somewhere. I don't know if it was on HBO or Hulu or what, but I was just going through it this month and I needed something genuinely lighthearted and funny and silly. And this kind of looked like that, and I find British humor very funny. So I just put it on just to see. I gotta be honest with you, now, a month later from watching it, I don't remember a single character's name or anything that happened. Not a thing that happened entered my brain. I feel like I'm conflating it in my mind with The Seven Dials on Netflix, which is a limited series adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel, which I also really enjoyed, but they're both British and kind of silly in different ways, and they're getting conflated in my mind. But it's a complete like meme shit post of a movie. It's completely unserious. It's about this aristocratic British family in this big manor called Fackham Hall. This family has 2 daughters who are both of like marriageable age and get into the relationships they probably should not be getting into, that their parents don't want them to get into, and chaos ensues. I can't stress enough, like the jokes were so dumb. This was a middle school type of humor, but in the mood that I was in that moment of time, I kind of needed it, and it was there for me when I needed it. So for that, I appreciate Fackham Hall. I gave it 3 stars. Next up, on March 19th, I saw The Bride, which of course is a 2026 release. It's from this year, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Now, I've been hesitant to speak on The Bride because I didn't like it very much or at all. And the reasons I didn't like it are different from the reasons I didn't like, for example, Wuthering Heights. I'm not angry about it. I'm kind of just disappointed and sad. That makes me less enthused to talk about it. I'm not like excited to come on and rant about it. I'm more just like, I wish this were better. In my full-length video where I cover Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, the book, I go through the entire plot, everything, the characters, themes, I read out important quotes. I walk you through the book, okay? If you don't have time to read it or if you don't want to read it. And the original reason I did that was to also then review Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro from 2025. It just so happened that The Bride was also coming out in 2026, and it's obviously based on the same source material. It's just more loosely based on the same source material. Something I think a lot of people don't know is that the concept of creating a bride for Frankenstein or for Frankenstein's monster is actually in Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. That is the big request that the creature brings to Victor Frankenstein as his ultimatum for leaving humanity alone and not hurting anyone else. Create a female companion for me and I will leave everyone alone and go off and run off and be with her. It's never said in the book that it's a bride, but the idea of that is definitely there. And I think it is a very interesting, though relatively unexplored aspect of Mary Shelley's story. So it's perfect for adaptations. I completely understand why people jump off that into adaptations and thoughts about what it would mean to create a bride of Frankenstein. Frankenstein is already a story about consent, agency, control, creation. It's almost like a natural continuation of that discussion to include a female monster. And it's almost a continuation of the parallel with Adam and Eve, wherein God creates Adam and then out of a rib from Adam creates Eve. Because Mary Shelley heavily uses the creation story and Genesis as inspiration and, symbolic parallels for Victor Frankenstein and the creation of the monster, it makes sense that she might have been thinking along those lines. So that's what I mean when I say it is juicy with potential. There is so much there thematically. There's so much feminist ideas there. What does it mean to create life? Why are men so fascinated with the creation of life? Is it because they can't do it? There's much to unpack there. The movie, The Bride, for me, didn't work basically at all. It was extremely fractured. Mary Shelley, the ghost of Mary Shelley, is a character in the story who speaks directly to the audience. But Mary Shelley plays kind of a weird role throughout the movie as partly narrator, partly active character, and partly omnipresent supernatural force. That was experimental. I applaud taking that kind of risk. I understand taking that kind of risk creatively, especially when you have Jessie Buckley on board to play many different characters, but I didn't like it. And I can respect the risk and respect that some idea was had, but still not enjoy the outcome. And I think that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in. There was just too many threads going on and nothing was fully fleshed out. Many things did not make sense. Some conversations were so rushed and some decisions were so rushed that felt like they should have been the whole premise of the movie. And then other things were so stretched out that felt relatively insignificant. Okay. And definitely the themes of agency, control, power, all of that, that's present and that gets explored. And that's why I don't want to heavily criticize this movie. I don't want to be too harsh on this movie because I really do think it had good intentions and I think it got a lot of things right. I was excited about a lot of things, but it just didn't work. The plane did not land. I was confused, disappointed. I was laughing out loud at parts because it was so ridiculous and it made such little sense. There's crime mystery, there's romance, there's science fiction and the paranormal, Frankenstein, everything. There's too much. Too much. I also wish I had gone to a screening that had open captions or on-screen closed captioning because I had a really hard time understanding a lot of Jessie Buckley specifically, and I felt the same way in Hamnet. So now I'm wondering if it's a Jessie Buckley thing. Maybe I have some auditory processing issues. No one would be surprised, but I had a really hard time understanding her and I find that so frustrating. Okay, fuck it. I'm going to say spoilers for The Bride. Skip ahead to the timestamp in the description or on the screen if you don't want to hear the spoilers, okay? Spoilers for The Bride starting now. Why did Mary Shelley possess Ida, how would she have known that that young woman would die and then be the body that Dr. Euphronius would pick to reanimate as the bride? Why would that happen? Also, and this is not a nitpicky thing, this is a genuine problem. Part of the premise of Frankenstein asking for a bride, I'm just going to call him Frankenstein, even though we all know he's Frankenstein's creature, whatever. Part of the problem of that is he specifically asks for a creature as deformed and hideous as he is, so that she will be forced to keep company with him, and so that she will also not be able to keep company with other humans the way that he can't because of the way he looks, right? That's like kind of crucial. And that's a big part of the moral dilemma is, can you engineer this being to specifically be hated and scorned by all to then be coerced into accepting the companionship of this very specific already living creature, right? Like there's so many bioethics type questions. But instead of Frankensteining a body together the way that Victor did, they're taking a whole human body and reanimating it. And Dr. Euphronius does this like zip, zap, zop, like no big deal. Like, okay, we got the body. Whoop. What? There's no buildup or struggle to the creation of the bride. There's no exploration of the mechanics of that, of why it hadn't been done yet, of why it was done now. Frankenstein basically just like talks the doctor into it and gets the doctor's sympathy, which to be fair, like is kind of how it goes in the book as well. But I didn't feel the tension of she's not going to do it for him. From the start, I was like, okay, she's going to do it. And then she does it pretty quickly. So I think that's a problem. I think we need tension and conflict to be more of a thing leading up to the creation of the bride. It also didn't make sense for it to be a whole human body reanimated. She looked human again. She looked normal. Aside from the fact that she coughs up some of this black gunk and it stains her face and lips permanently for some reason. And that's what like marks her as something other than human. Otherwise, she looks totally normal. What? How did it splatter out onto her and then like instantly dry and stain her skin forever? It was very weird. And even the like makeup of it, I'm sure they had great makeup artists on set. I really did like a lot of things about the hair, makeup, and costuming. I'm not trashing them, but I just kept fixating on it. I felt like the stain looked a little bit different sometimes. And like the black on her lips, how did it like perfectly outline her lips and then spill all over her cheek? What are we talking about? Do you know what I mean? It was bizarre. It felt like so contrived to create this visual language for her, to create a Halloween costume that you could dress up as the bride. And it didn't make a ton of sense. And that I find that really frustrating. Oh my gosh, there's so much more. The dance scene when like, I guess we're supposed to assume that Mary Shelley possesses like dozens of people and makes them dance. Why'd she do that? And then just stop. Why didn't she do other things then? Why was that like the extent of her supernatural ghost powers? I don't know, man. I don't know. I wish I had subtitles. When Mary Shelley is speaking out of Ida's or the bride's or Penelope Rogers' body, and she's just saying like words in a British accent, like random words, like poetry, fate, death, men, women. The fuck? Like, I don't like that. I find it irritating. Nothing wrong with the performance, but from a writing point of view, I don't like the screenplay. And I think Jessie Buckley had a great time with it. I think as an actor, as like a very theatrical actor, it's probably a dream role to be like, oh, you want me to play like 4 or 5 characters in one and do different accents and bits and be possessed? I'm sure that's like a dream and so fun, but I just am not into it. It was so like just cringe inducing and like made my skin crawl to watch the bride not know that Frankenstein had created her. And it was also just really confusing to me because she can see that he's not human. Like she can see that he's a monster, right? Why does she so readily accept that they had been engaged? It makes sense why he lies, and that's a good tension to create that he's lying, but I didn't really get why she even believed it in the first place, why she so readily accepted it and asked so few questions about it. Then there's so much going on in this movie. Then you have this whole side plot where she creates like a feminist movement. All these women paint their faces like her and go out into the streets and do what? It's so vague. It's so like in the background. It felt ridiculous. Why is it a mob movie, a like feminist movement movie, supernatural, and romance? You got to pick something somewhere along the line. I just really didn't like it. I really didn't like it. And there were certain things that were just like so corny too. I felt like the movie took itself so seriously and it thought it was so profound when it wasn't. And that just makes it's impossible to take seriously from the outside. Like the amount of times the line, "I would prefer not to," is repeated. "Here comes the motherfucking bride." Like so many things were repeated and really just not that deep. And even if they were that deep, like we get it. Stop shoving it down my throat. Yeah, I was really disappointed by this movie and really upset. And it's a real shame. I wonder how much changed from the final script to shooting to editing to the final cut. It feels ironically very Frankenstein together, jumbled up, and like a lot of different versions of a story were like very clumsily strong-armed together. And you can feel that. It does not feel cohesive. So unfortunately, I gave The Bride 2.5 stars. Next up, on March 20th, I saw Palestine 36, which came out this year, 2026. If you're in New York City, it's currently showing at some AMCs and it's showing at BAM. So I highly recommend you go see Palestine 36. Up top, I'll give you my rating. I gave it 5 stars. I went to see it at BAM, and then there was like an interview and a Q&A with the director afterwards, which was really awesome. I have to say, going to see it at BAM at like 7 p.m. with my sister and my brother-in-law, I had to get through a crowd. It was packed to the brim. So many people were there to see this movie, like Arabs, non-Arabs. Really an amazing turnout. Not an empty seat in the house. I think some people were standing. You could just feel the energy in the air, the respect for the craft of filmmaking, the solidarity politically. Having that in like an artistic space and like feeling it in the room was just so powerful, and it makes me so grateful to live in New York and have access to those kinds of like in-person cultural experiences. But yeah, let's talk about Palestine 36. So it was directed by Anne-Marie Jassir, who came out after for the Q&A and was so funny and smart and charming. I asked her a question, not a big deal. Let me read you the synopsis. Year 1936. As villages across Palestine rise against British colonial rule, Yusuf drifts between his rural home and the restless energy of Jerusalem, longing for a future beyond the growing unrest. But history is relentless. With rising numbers of Jewish immigrants escaping anti-Semitism in Europe, and some arriving with nefarious Zionist colonial ambitions, and the Palestinian population uniting in the largest and longest uprising against Britain's 30-year dominion, all sides spiral towards inevitable collision in a decisive moment for the British Empire and the future of the entire region. So this film is really heavily focused on the establishment of the State of Israel, what British colonial rule in Palestine looked like, because oftentimes I feel like the conversation about Palestinian struggle and oppression starts in 1948 with the Nakba and the establishment of the Israeli state. But in actuality, that didn't come out of nowhere. That never could have happened without British colonial rule coming first. And so this film really focuses and like hones in on what that period of time, what this 1 year in time in Palestine looked like. It covers everything from the intellectual elites in cities, journalists, politicians, faith leaders, to the poor rural villages, different religions, Muslims and Christians native to Palestine, and what the violent British colonial rule looked like. Of course, I knew there was British colonial rule in Palestine. I know that British imperialism is violent and oppressive. I know all of these things factually. Seeing it, experiencing it through the lens of individual characters who you become attached to and whose ambitions and passions you understand is entirely different. That's what's so powerful about film. That's what's so powerful about art. That's why all art is political. I was just blown away. I felt like I learned so much. The film definitely has lofty ambitions in terms of preserving historical truth and telling a story. Because of that, it's not primarily focused on, I would say, like entertaining you. It's primarily focused on telling an important story. And so like my sister, when we were talking about it after, she said that she kind of felt that a little bit, that it was like for a Western audience and like explaining a lot of things. And I felt that too, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's necessary. We need 20 more of them right now. I was thinking about this. Think about how many World War II films you've seen. World War II films are like a genre, a subgenre of war films. We know so much about World War II. We know so much about the Holocaust. We know so much about Nazi oppression and occupation. And the fact that we know it through film is significant. We know it through specific characters who we connected to. We see it visually in front of us, and so we can picture what it really was like. It makes it feel more present. It makes it feel more important. It reminds us constantly, and it allows for the examination of a huge conflict from so many different lenses, from American point of view, from European Jewish point of view. So many different perspectives have been captured in detail on film. There's a movie specifically about the guys who saved art during World War II. We don't have that about Palestine or about the Middle East at large. And the reason why that matters is because history is written by the victors. And when Israel and the United States are actively trying to rewrite history, lie about things that have happened over the past week, let alone the past 100 years, when that's part of the colonial playbook, it's not a coincidence, it's not a one-off thing, it is part of the colonial playbook, followed by the British in this movie, in this time period, followed by the Israeli Zionist government, followed by the United States. It is not a coincidence. It's done systematically. History is erased systematically. The story of millions of Palestinians is erased systematically. So preserving it and telling it is hugely urgent and important. And something really cool that Anne-Marie Jacir does in this film is use real archival footage from Palestine from 1936, and they colorize the film. So you will see, if you go see this movie, and you really, really should, you will see actual footage from Palestine in 1936. It was originally black and white. They colorized it for the film. They colorized it beautifully. And funnily enough, she was talking in the Q&A after about how much of the production budget went to colorizing that film because it was so important to her that you could see immersively that world and feel it more presently, and not feel that this world where Jerusalem was a diverse city shared peacefully amongst many different religions pre-occupation, not feel like that's some like distant fantasy. That's recent history. It's real. Those are people's grandparents in those videos. And the transition from that colorized archival footage to the footage of the actual film feels pretty seamless. Not only is it like beautiful and narratively helpful, but just the physical act of preservation of primary sources feels historically significant as well. And I think that's amazing work. The story was complicated, deep, beautiful, heartbreaking to watch. You see what it was like from the perspective of die-hard, like British imperialist hawks fresh off the boat from India saying, well, this is how it worked in India. Let's try this. And then you see the British who were more naive to their own country's intentions and who really think like, well, we're trying, we're going to help bring you into the world and we want da, 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 da. And being naive to that, at some point that goodwill and good intention runs out and you are complicit and you have to look around and see what's going on around you. So it explores that dynamic. Even within like native Palestinians, colonialism and occupation doesn't happen without the co-signing of some locals and natives for personal gain. The same way that like patriarchy and white supremacy doesn't happen without the co-signing of some white women who are not gonna be on top at the end of the day, but the deal they get is like, okay, I'll be less oppressed. You'll throw me a bone. So exploring all of those dynamics in detail in this film, it was just amazing. I don't know what to say. It was heartbreaking. I cried through it. I'll cry just thinking about it. But seeing how land in the villages is politicized, how changing from a system, a native land management system, which often is based on community and the equitable distribution of resources and less based on capitalist individual ownership, seeing how that gets replaced by the occupying power and an innocuous like documentation turns into theft. You just have to watch it, I think. I think everyone should. And I think, like I said, we need 20 more of them. 20 more of them right now. I want this film in so many different versions for so many different periods of time in Palestine. And I think if you're one of those people who loves to say, I can't speak on it because I'm not educated and it's complicated. Colonial oppression, colonial violence is actually not complicated. It's the same every single time, just in different applications. And if you really want to educate yourself, the least you can do is watch a movie. So watch this movie. Educate yourself then. Look at what the patterns look like and observe it all around you in the world today. Shout out BAM for supporting Palestinian liberation and education through art, decolonization through art. Okay, next up, kind of taking a tonal pivot here, I saw Hoppers, another 2026 release. I saw that on March 23rd. I gave it 3.5 stars and I said it was cute. Yeah, it was cute. Listen, this is a new Pixar release and it had a little bit of buzz about it being like existential and interesting. And I like an animated film. I like a Pixar film. So I thought, let me check it out. Okay, with my AMC A-list, I'm like, whatever. I was kind of disappointed. I don't know if my expectations were unrealistic, but the premise is that these scientists have figured out how to basically like put your human consciousness into an animal to infiltrate the animals and collect information and data about them that we could not collect from outside observation. Pretty interesting, right? And our main character, Mabel, loves animals and loves nature. And when the city is threatening to destroy her favorite, I don't know what they call it, the glade, the pond that she used to spend time at with her grandmother, she launches a plan to thwart the destruction of nature and construction of a highway through the animals themselves. I like the premise. I like a protagonist who is a young woman, environmental activist, extremely outspoken, angry, rightfully angry, justifiably angry, kind of hot-headed, headstrong. I think that's great as a character. That's what young people are like. I like to see a young woman character who's not overly feminized or sexualized at all. I like the simplicity of the scale of it. It's just this town, the mayor, and this one glade. It's not like saving the world or something, and it's still treated as like a huge grand undertaking, which I really liked. You know, start small, focus on your own community. But I don't know. Other than that, I didn't like connect with it that deeply. I guess it wasn't as weird as I thought people were hyping it up to be. Like it wasn't as trippy as I thought people were hyping it up to be. There were moments that were funny, but I mean, it's for kids. It's a movie for kids. I'm an adult. I went alone to see it in theaters. I think I liked it an acceptable amount, but I didn't think, oh, this is going to be like a classic, I want to watch this with my friends type of movie. I will say though, the last like 15 minutes were pretty awesome and they were crazy. I can't say like if you're an adult, I recommend necessarily going to see Hoppers. If you have kids, if you're a family, I think it's great for kids. That's Hoppers. Okay, next up, I watched Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man. This also came out in March 2026 on Netflix. This was so bad. I was so disappointed in this film. I gave it 2 stars. I watched it with both of my sisters and my brother-in-law, and most of us had seen all of Peaky Blinders, the show. I think I stopped Peaky Blinders like 1 or 2 seasons before it actually ended because it's the type of show that like kind of gets repetitive and loses its sparkle. But at a certain point in time, like you could not pry Peaky Blinders out of my cold, dead hands. At a certain time, I was obsessed with that show. I was obsessed with Cillian Murphy as Tommy Shelby, whole thing. Loved it. It explored like a lot of the same themes that a lot of crime or mob movies and media does, and it was just like a fresh setting for it compared to like the American version. And it was great acting, it was great writing, like a lot of things came together to make it special. This movie was garbage. I don't know what to tell you. It was peak Netflix stupidity where the dialogue is so over the top obvious. It is so clear to me, and we know this categorically. Actors, creatives in the industry have talked about executives, not just at Netflix, but executives talking about scripts need to make sense to someone who's watching their phone screen and has the movie on the big screen. So they are creating this with the idea that the audience is not really paying attention. And therefore, if you do really pay attention, it's garbage. It doesn't make any sense. This is not a spoiler because this is literally the opening scene. It's during World War II, and the Germans have this plan to print a bunch of fake British currency, which I think is true. And they need a way to get the currency, like inject the currency into the British economy in order to create mass inflation, right? I was an econ major, guys. I understand inflation. I know. Crazy. So there's just like a guy who represents the Germans who pitches this plan to Tommy Shelby's son, played by Barry Keoghan. And he just like so explicitly states, are you willing to betray your country, this country, England, where we are right now, by accepting from me, a representative of Nazi Germany, 70 million GBP, which are fake. We printed them. You accept them from us. We win the war. You get 70 million. Huh? How's that sound? Like, never in my life have I seen a criminal proposition so explicitly say. It felt like when someone is like really obviously a cop trying to buy drugs and is like, does anybody have an eighth of weed I can buy? Like, why are you saying it so obviously? It made no sense in the context, and it made me think that he was a spy, was a cop, was wearing a wire or something, because it did not make sense why this was repeated multiple times or explained multiple times, apart from the fourth wall breaking fact that they think you're on your phone. To be honest with you, even if I'm on my phone, I'm not that stupid. It's insulting. It's insulting to the audience. I really hate when movies assume their audience is either stupid or not paying attention, or both. Audiences are smart, audiences are intuitive, and you should be performing with the expectation that your audience is not only paying attention, but engaging. Otherwise, you are rewarding people who don't do that, and you're punishing the people who do. It was just stupid. And beyond that, like, I don't know, it was so stupid on so many levels. It was so disappointing and ridiculous. There was a lot of like questionable, in my opinion, kind of Lady Macbeth stuff going on. I could not believe how bad it was. And I was like laughing, but I also was not laughing. It's not funny to me. It was so disappointing. I still love Cillian Murphy. It's not Barry Keoghan's fault, really. He did the best he could with the material he was given, but the material was garbage. I think it's actually overrated on Letterboxd. It has 3.1 average rating on Letterboxd. I think people are being generous and blinded by their attachment to the show and their love of the characters, and I don't think they're seeing how bad this is. Someone said, "This is the worst movie of the year so far," and mind you, I've watched Wuthering Heights. I have to agree. I actually have to agree. I think Wuthering Heights, which I ripped to shreds in every way, absolutely tore apart, raged at, completely burned to the ground, openly, publicly on my channel. You can go check it out. I felt it had more redeeming qualities and good moments than this movie. This movie was like genuinely slop. That's how I feel. All right, so unfortunately, that was The Immortal Man. I gave it 2 stars. I don't know why I gave it 2 stars. I think it's 1 star. Let me fix that. You guys know I'm not so good with my star ratings. It's vibes based. You know, I guess, no, it's 2 stars because I wasn't like offended. I was just disappointed. I don't think it's like harmful. Okay, next up are 2 fun ones. First, I saw Forbidden Fruits, which is, of course, a 2026 release. I saw that March 26th. I think that was the release night. This was so much fun. If you haven't heard about this movie, I don't know how, because I feel like it's been marketed really hard, but also I am the demographic, so maybe it's just been marketed really hard to me. But this is a sort of witchy, culty, offbeat, dark comedy to the tune of like a Heathers, I would say. It takes place at a shopping mall, at a store called Free Eden. Lily Reinhart, Victoria Pedretti, and Alexandra Shipp are these 3 beautiful girls who work at the store, and they are each named after a fruit. So it's unclear, like, if in this universe we're supposed to buy in that these are their real names, or if we're supposed to take it that they're nicknames. It doesn't really, like, you kind of suspend your disbelief and you're just like, okay, that's Apple. So Lily Reinhart is Apple. She's wearing like an awesome ginger wig that is so wig, but it also suits her and she looks incredible. Victoria Pedretti is Cherry and she's blonde. And then Alexandra Shipp is Fig and she has like dark brown braids with platinum blonde highlights in them. Then there's like a newcomer, Lola Tongue, who is Pumpkin. And she's kind of the dorky girl who works at Auntie Anne's at the mall, but she kind of tries to infiltrate Free Eden and join the gang, the Forbidden Fruits gang. Now, they are the cool kids of the mall, but they also are a coven, a witch coven, and they do spells and rituals and stuff. And it's very campy. Free Eden employee Apple secretly runs a witchy femme cult in the basement of the mall store after hours, with fellow fruits Cherry and Fig. But when new hire Pumpkin challenges their performative sisterhood, the women are forced to face their own poisons or succumb to a bloody fate. It's an interesting premise. It is such a bizarre setting, like to be set in a shopping mall that is bustling with activity. The idea that like a shopping mall in 2026 would be bustling with activity is just bizarre in and of itself, and that kind of sets you up to play along with everything else that goes on. I really like this cast. I really like these women. I really like the premise and the vibes of this film. There were really good moments in it, but it wasn't perfect to me. Like, as I had fun and I was like, okay, this is fun. I'm glad I'm seeing this. I would absolutely rewatch it. I can see how over time, like, this could be very rewatchable and become something of a cult classic. But I think pitching itself as one is also risky, and it's too soon to tell. Like, we need to see how we feel about this in a few years to say whether or not this is a cult classic. Victoria Pedretti's character Cherry was kind of, I don't know how I felt about it. Her Texas accent felt very off to me. I'm not from Texas. I'm from Long Island, so what do I really know? But it was distracting. Like, she kept saying friend, but that was the only like pin-pen merger word she would say. Like, you know how like a Southern accent, there's a pin-pen merger. So like the thing that you write with is called a pin, and the same thing, and the thing you put in your hair is called a pin. Whereas in like a East Coast dialect, it would be a pen that you write with and a pin in your hair. So instead of like friend, it's friend. But like, she really overemphasized that word, and I just kept hearing her say, "You're my best friend." And then the rest of her accent, I didn't feel like she was doing that. I don't know what to say. It was very confusing. And her character is very, I mean, she's Cherry. She's very over-sexualized, and like, that's the point. And it's like relevant to the story for sure. But I also just sometimes found it difficult to watch. I think this movie has some really interesting things to say, though, about what it means to be quote unquote male-centered. I feel like this is a really hot topic, especially like younger millennial, older Gen Z women are having this conversation online and in real life amongst ourselves about being male-centered as a straight woman, like having your social life, your mood, your ambitions, everything ultimately revolve around men or a man, and how that can damage so many other aspects of your life, how that can let you down, that can make you a less reliable friend, that can make life just less fun. There are so many aspects to this conversation, but it's also thrown around as kind of an insult, the same way that like girl's girl has been watered down and thrown around as an insult so far as to not mean anything. Like, people saying, oh, she's male-centered is essentially calling her a pick-me in modern online parlance, I feel like. And so it has some real conceptual power and something interesting to talk about, but it also can be weaponized and sort of simplified down to nothing and used to shame and put down women who are in any way emotionally vulnerable to men. How do you decenter men if you also date men, and if you only date men especially? This, just to be clear, like, this movie does not ever say the words decenter men, I don't think, but it is kind of like thematically present. And I think Apple wields her power by kind of like co-opting feminist ideas of like independence and decentering men to shame and guilt her friends for being human in many ways. I can't really say much more without spoilers, but I did like it, and I was thinking about it a lot after. I just think it missed the mark on certain aspects where it didn't go deep enough, or it was like rushed, and there were some things that I wish we had explored further. That being said, I think it's a really cool project. I'm happy for them. I support them. I do recommend going to see it. I think it'd be really fun to go see with friends. I'm sure we'll see it at Halloween. I gave it 3 stars. Okay, finally, the last movie I watched in March, although there's going to be a bonus movie I talk about at the end of this, the last movie I watched in March was Project Hail Mary, which came out in March 2026. I saw this on the 30th. I had read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which is the book that the movie is based off of, like last year, I think, because I just go through lists of upcoming movie adaptations and read those books as like a book recommendation. And I liked the book. I didn't love it. So I really like science fiction in general, but I find that Andy Weir is he's a very specific version of science fiction that is like optimistic and a little bit corny, and usually falls on ultimately humans are good. And that's not a bad thing at all, but in order to get that, there are certain limitations on what kinds of stories you can tell, or like what outcomes can be in your stories. So he writes in a very predictable, formulaic way. So when you're reading a novel, it feels like you're reading a screenplay. Like, everything is like written with the idea of adapting it into a screenplay and creating a movie out of it. And I really don't like that. I'm a big reader. I watch a lot of movies. I can feel the outline and the structure of a story very presently when something is formulaic. Like, I know exactly what you're doing. And that kind of takes away some of the enjoyment for me. That being said, I think he has good intentions. I think his stories are often, pleasantly hopeful and positive. He genuinely is so passionate and loves what he does. And he writes good science parts where all of the science is like plausible, even if it's completely factually made up. The internal logic is consistent. And I appreciate that. And I really like that. And you can like actually follow it and think about it and maybe have an idea about what the solution could be, especially if you are a scientist. I feel like scientists like and respect him because of that. I don't know if you're a scientist. Let me know your opinion. You guys are all individuals, I guess. I shouldn't generalize. As far as the movie goes, I was expecting something similarly like solid, good, positive, maybe not super deep, maybe not the most groundbreaking, life-changing, profound story. As a comp, I feel like I would say maybe Arrival. Arrival is a very popular, like I think it was pretty high-grossing science fiction movie with Amy Adams, directed by Denis Villeneuve, if I'm not mistaken. And it's also unique and beautiful and profound and kind of like serious. Not to say that that's better, but it is different and it can feel more like intimately affecting than something like this. That being said, I really like this movie. I think it was a perfect adaptation, and even if the adaptation is kind of a layup, it's still great to see it done perfectly. Science teacher Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, wakes up on a spaceship light years from home with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. As his memory returns, he begins to uncover his mission: solve the riddle of the mysterious substance causing the sun to die out. He must call on his scientific knowledge and unorthodox ideas to save everything on Earth from extinction. But an unexpected friendship means he may not have to do it alone. There was so much love and care put into this. I know from like some interviews Ryan Gosling is doing, he picked up the rights very early on and had a lot of say in how this was done and wanted this to be a movie that he could share with his kids as like a hopeful story for humanity. And I think that's a noble artistic mission, especially for a generation that is being brought into a world that's basically telling them your parents shouldn't have had you because everything's going to shit and there's going to be no world left for you. That's what they're growing up into. That's what I feel like I was growing up into, and I was born in 1999. So imagine being born in like 2010. It's even more amplified. Imagine being born in 2020. So I think the idea and the premise to intentionally create something hopeful and positive, I think that's beautiful. And I don't begrudge him that at all. There were so many aspects of this that were really well thought out. The fact that Rocky, this is not a spoiler, it's all over the place already. Rocky, the alien friend, is a puppet and not CGI. So important, so brilliant. You can feel it in the acting. You can feel it in the movie. You don't get the uncanny valley heebie-jeebies from CGI from it. That's awesome. I really respect the amount of time and effort and money that goes into that. I really liked the set design. I like Ryan Gosling as the hapless, accidental astronaut, and he fit the character from the book very well. I mean, my theater was packed and people were laughing. I was laughing. I will say it was a little bit long and it dragged a little bit at the end, especially because I had read the book. So I was like, come on, guys, let's get on with it. And I heard some people in the theater saying that as well, that it was a bit long. For science fiction, it's not that bad. It was under 3 hours at least. Sandra Hüller. Oh, I can't believe it. Wait, I'm looking up how to say that.
Sandra Hüller.
Sandra Hüller. I feel like that's maybe a middle ground pronunciation. Anyway, I love Sandra Hüller. I think she's amazing. I think I first saw her in Anatomy of a Fall. Incredible movie. And I just love her. She plays a great, very interesting character in this. She brings a sort of like grounding steadiness to the movie and a believable authority figure. I believe that she's in charge of saving the world. I think this is a critical piece of movie theater culture. Ryan Gosling has said, I saw a quote he said that I didn't verify at all, I just assumed it was real, where he was like, it's not the audience's job to figure out how to keep movie theaters alive. It's our job as filmmakers, as producers, to figure out how to make it worth their time and money to go see a movie. We have to give them a movie that's worth seeing. And movies like this that are huge blockbusters for everyone, the whole family, for all ages, then gets talked about and memeified and becomes part of pop culture and part of the zeitgeist. That is so important to keep theaters open and to keep movie theater culture alive. This is the type of movie that people go see who aren't an AMC A-list member, who are there 4 times a week. Normal people go see this type of movie. And I appreciate and value the place that it has in the movie ecosystem. And I say that because I'm like checking my own bias here of like, yes, this is a little bit basic and a little bit predictable and pop, but it's good. it's good. It's done well. And I like that. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Now, technically, that's everything I watched in March. And then we get into this month, which so far this month I'm watching at like double the rate. So my April wrap up will be much longer. However, I want to mention a short film I watched this month in April because it's going to be released first week of May, and I want to make sure I talk about it before then. So this was sent to me by the filmmakers, who are first-time amateur indie filmmakers from Australia, Brant Kakulas and Zach Dacus. They made this scrappy little indie short with basically nothing. They had $2,000 as a budget, which in production, I mean, that's like $0. I've never made a movie besides in high school, but I mean, that's like zero. That's like no dollars. And they put together this crime drama thriller short that I was really impressed with. So the premise is that this undercover cop is trying to infiltrate a organized crime ring by like pretending to be helping with money laundering. And he's supposed to figure out how to take them down from the inside based on that. But actually, the organization is kind of already imploding as he's trying to infiltrate, and stuff goes down. It was beautifully shot, and I was very impressed by the professionalism of the cinematography. It was just a lot more polished than I thought it would be. Did it still feel like a first time, like amateur indie? Yes. But it was, given the constraints, it was just so polished and executed with such care that I think is really amazing. It was really nicely lit too, like a lot of high contrast and playing with light and color that you don't see on a lot of major productions. Like everything is becoming flat. I didn't feel like that was the case here at all. I like that you can feel the excitement and joy in filmmaking. Like you can feel that they're like, oh, this is so cool. We get to decide how we shoot this. Let's make it look like this. That is a very beautiful thing to see in indie film, and I really appreciate that. It was a good score, good set. The script was good too. Like it was pretty confusing, honestly, but it was supposed to be confusing. It's a short film. It's like 35 minutes. So you're supposed to be figuring out on pace with the film what's going on. It's the type of thing where like if you're watching with someone who doesn't watch movies, they'll keep saying, wait, why is she there? Wait, does he know him? And then you have to go, we don't know. We're not supposed to know yet. We're supposed to figure that out. Like there's a lot that you have to piece together as you go. And that is a dying art. The Immortal Man that I just talked about. It was nice not to be talked down to and to have like everything explained to me like 1 + 1 = 2. I actually did have to sit up and pay attention and be like, wait, who was that again? I think that's a good thing. I think that's interesting in a crime thriller. I love the title Corked. There's like wine involved in the story, so that was just like a cute title. I think that's clever. I'm happy for them. It's premiering in Santa Cruz on May 7th, and then it's supposed to be available on Apple TV. If you are an indie filmmaker, if you're an amateur filmmaker, if you're a student filmmaker, send me your stuff. I would love to see it. Not to be presumptuous that anybody really wants my opinion, but open call. Other than that, I'm like tempted to talk about the movies I watched so far in April too, but I really think I need to keep these monthly videos separate to just stay organized and keep everything together. That wraps up everything I watched in March. Like I said, I didn't really watch a ton of movies in March, especially compared to my regular pace, but life happens and there were some real good ones in there. If I were to tell you, like out of all the movies I talked about, what do you have to see in my opinion? Number 1, Palestine 36. Required viewing, not optional. Number 2, probably Send Help. Number 3, I don't know. Forbidden Fruits and Project Hail Mary are like kind of tied. I gave Project Hail Mary 3.5 stars and Forbidden Fruits 3, but depending on who you are, I would recommend one of them to you. Don't forget to leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, share, send to your friends. If you'd like to find me on all platforms, browse my library of episodes, you can go to moviesforbreakfast.com, moviesforbreakfast.com. All my links are in the description. That's all for now. I've got to get ready for painting class at my sister's art studio. If you're in New York, check out Atelier Dalal. It is a boutique art studio owned and operated by my older sister, Natasha, who hosts workshops. So there's like an oil painting class you can take that's like a semester, and you take multiple classes with the same people. I'm doing that. I've never painted before, and I'm low-key good at it, which I didn't know, but because she's a really good teacher. And then there's some other instructors who will host classes at the studio. So you can do a tatriz workshop, which is traditional Palestinian embroidery, and you learn about the history of the craft and then also get to try it for yourself. There's like a watercolor food painting class. There's all types of classes you can check out on her Instagram and website, but truly cannot recommend it enough. Obviously, I'm biased because it's my freaking sister and I'm there all the time. But if you're in New York, it's in Greenpoint. Genuinely like an amazing date night or something to do with a friend, or come by yourself and make new friends. Everyone there is always like very chatty. It's intimate. Thanks for watching me and supporting me and saying nice things to keep me going. I appreciate it. I'll be back soon. Okay. Bye.